Welcome to the channel where all you gotta do is build a new shop on your property. So yeah, this is the tree that we had to have removed because it was kind of going to be in the way of the shop, and somebody had truncated it, and it was a good sized tree. So yeah, that had to get gone. So that was first order of business. And the second order of business was, okay, well, let's put some stakes in the ground and some rope and see how big of a building I can fit in this. This is the area I got, so you use what you got. I didn't really want to chop this tree down, and this is pretty aggressive slope up here at the top. So I wanted to kind of stay in level. It's not really level. It probably goes up 8 feet or something from, yeah, maybe 10. I'm forgetting how steep it was, but because there's a building there now. But and this is where the tree was to the left. And yeah, so this is the area that I had to play with. Don't worry about my dog there pooping and stuff. They do that. So yeah, basically I just laid out how much of a building I thought I could fit in there, and that's what I had to deal with. So we'll get started. Show you what it takes to put a steel structure on your property. So now that I had an idea of how big a building I wanted, I needed to get some drawings together for getting a permit. And instead of starting from zero, this house that I'm living in was built in 2014, so I know there's permits for it recently. So I went down to the county planning commission and I said, "Hey, this is the address. Can you pull the plans for this thing?" And they said, "Oh, sure. That'll cost you a modest fee of $35, and we can't do that unless you get this piece of paper signed by the architects that designed your house and did the site plan." So I did that. I sent them a nice letter saying, blah, 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 I'm building a shed, shop, whatever. Please fill this out for me and sign it and send it back to me. And so, I don't know, a month later or so, I got the letter from them, and I took it down to the planning department and said, "Here you go. Please give me my plans." They gave me a USB stick with the plans on it in PDF form and sent me on my way. So after I got the PDF files, I opened them up and looked at them, but then I had to go down and get plots made. So I think it was 7-8 pages of various detailed instructions of, how to construct the building, where to put it, and sewer and the septic and all that junk. So anyway, I printed those out. That was like $70 or so to get those plotted on full size. And then I had a place to start. Okay, so now that I have the site plan from the county, I can kind of science out where everything is going to live, because this is all, these are the elevation lines, and it has some semblance of distance between where the property line is and stuff like that. So this is the area that I'm planning on putting the shop. Over here is kind of really steep and not a lot of real room there and a bunch of rubble. So it's going to be right here. A couple of stipulations. It needs to be 15 feet from the property line, which is this line here, and 50 feet from the house. So it's going to be in this place here. And I'm going to build the biggest shop I can fit in this area. As you can see, this gets really steep up here. Now this is somewhat level. Well, not really level, but it could be leveled in this area. And then I also have, I have to account for this as a septic tank and a leach field, so I can't cover up the leach field. So those are my, limitations on this property. Okay, so basically what I did is I took that PDF file and I made it into a JPEG, and then I tossed that into SolidWorks, and then I actually traced out the building and I knew the size of the building and everything. So that established my scale. And then this is actually just a sketch in SolidWorks. And I just jiggled it around till I got all the dimensions I needed. This is minimum 50 feet. It's kind of parallel to the front porch on the building. So I just had to kind of scoot it around to make this happen, the 50 feet happen, which I think is for fire. And then this is like a cinder block wall up here that was already there. So it was like a good reference for the people that are doing the forms and the county to look at it. So anyway, there was a dead tree here, which I had removed years prior to this project, because it was like it was like 30 feet tall, and it was a big tree. This is like 43 inches in diameter at the bottom. So it was a big tree, and it was all rotted, so I had that removed. Okay, so once I decided I wanted a 20 by 35 building, I found this company called Interstate Carports. There's tons of people out there that make them, but this is the one that I chose, and the main reason I chose it is, well, cost, and it was already signed off for the state of California for all the pertinent details needed: snow load and wind load and exposure, seismic load, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't have to, if I would have done a wood-framed building, I would have had to hire somebody to design that foundation and what thickness of the studs and yada, 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 yada. Plus, there's a lot of added cost to doing a wood-frame building that you don't note, but you got to have all kinds of, you got to put a roof on it when you're done, and you got to put siding on it when you're done. Whereas a steel building, you just put it up and it's done. So, but yeah, this document this has nothing to do with me. This is like they paid for the permit to get the state of California to sign this off. As so as long as whoever builds this to these specifications, it should pass the inspection by the local authorities. So I had to submit these on my plans as part of my plan, right? So it has all kinds of, fasteners and how far these are apart and what the trusses look like, all the cement thickness and rebar stuff, cement strength, right? So this would have cost me quite a bit of money to have an architect go through and look at my site and design a building and put the doors where I wanted, the windows where I wanted, yada, yada, yada. That would have probably cost close to what this building cost. And the fact that this was already approved, I know that all that's going to be okay with my local authorities. So that was a big factor in choosing a steel building over, traditional wood frame and siding and roof and all that stuff. So this is what I came up with. I got two 10 by 10 roll-up doors, one on the house side, one on kind of the driveway side. And then I got a human door and a couple little windows, 30 by 30 windows. So now that I have that, I can start working on the rest of the plans so I can submit for permits to the city. So as per usual, I went to my SolidWorks program and I cartooned kind of I took the site plan and I put the curvature of all the elevation lines, and it made the swoopy surface, and then I kind of just truncated it to an area that kind of mattered to the inspectors, and then I drew the building as it was going to be built with the doors and the windows and all that junk where they are. So that worked out nice, and then from that I could make other drawings for the inspector to, approve. So this happens to be the revised drawing. The original drawing didn't have an isometric view on it, so that's why it's revision 1. And it didn't have an exterior light because I was not aware that it had to have an exterior light that was motion detected. So I made a couple of changes here and I put them in the revision block, which, and then this is the top view with the fluorescent lights. They did have a little bit of a problem with me putting this many lights in, which actually there's more lights than that in there. There's actually 6 rows, but they thought I was having so many lights in there I was going to do some growing stuff, but yeah, that's not the case. So anyway, and the reason they have to have all this junk is that they have to inspect the electrical, and they give this to the fire guys, they give it to the septic, they give it to the drainage guys, they give it to, everybody has to have their own take on what you did and why you did it, and they have to approve it. Okay, so after I submitted all my cartoons to the city, they came back with some changes. One of which was I had to be not 15 feet from the street, I had to be 20 feet from the property line. So instead of this being 15 feet from the street, which is what I thought the rule was, now I have to be 20 feet from the property line. And since the property line wasn't marked all that well, I had to hire a surveyor, and that costs some money. So now, as you can see, maybe you can't, but this is still 20 feet from the property line like it was before. This used to be 30 feet, now it's 28, and I basically just tilted this over, and this is still 51 feet from that corner to that corner. So actually it's kind of easier to measure now because this is the closest point to this closest point. So, but I still have a foot to deal with. So, and then the slab is actually going to be slightly bigger than it's going to be 20. The slab is 21 by 36 because they wanted a foot larger, so they have 6 inches on each side. So in case it's not perfectly square or whatever, they can still erect the building. So anyway, after the first go around with the permit people, they made some recommendations. I made the changes. There was a little light on here that had to change, and anyway, I had to change the placement of the building by a few feet, which turns out it ended up better that way because now I have room to put my toy hauler in here between the road. So whereas if I would have put it in the original placement, I would have had more room over here to get around the driveway, but this is kind of better because I can hide my toy hauler in here. So now that I had permits, I got some quotes for getting the cement work done, which also included some grading and making it level and stuff like that. So this is kind of what it looked like after the forming was done. That's the hole for there's 2 of them actually for the lift. I knew where the lift was going to go. I wasn't super happy with how they just had this mesh in there, so I put 1/2-inch rebar on 16-inch centers before the inspector came out and looked at it. So kind of overkill, but that's how I like to do things. So now that the forms were all done, the inspector guy was going to come out and take a look at it. And as you can see in this little blue circle, which I'll zoom in on for you. Property line setbacks will be checked during the foundation inspection. A survey may be required if the property line location is questionable. Yeah, so I already had a survey done. However, when the inspector guy came out, he seemed to think that the forms were about 1/2 foot, 6 inches too close to the road. So what my plan was, because I have an extra foot of foundation, 6 inches on each side, I was just going to shift the building towards the house and towards the top of the hill. and make it to the edge on one side. So that was my plan. Instead of like ripping out all the forms and starting over, which would have been a huge tear up and it wouldn't have been free. So after considering moving the building all the way to the edge, I called up the building manufacturer and they said you can only do that if you put these extra little they're little brackets on the inside of the base frame. And what that does is that allows the anchors to not be like right in the edge of the cement, because it's only like a 2¼ inch piece of, tubing, square tubing. So if you're drilling it like an inch from the edge, and it could break out and it could be a problem. So I had to have all these extra brackets welded to the cage for the frame before I got it. So, and that was an extra, I don't know, $225 or something like that. Not a big deal, but I had to do it ahead of time. I couldn't, you can't just do it, and otherwise it won't pass inspection, right? So this is what those little brackets look like. So, not a big deal, but it's they're kind of a pain in the ass to sweep around and stuff, but they make it work. Not that big of a deal. So yeah, the guys showed up. They have this pretty fancy trailer that holds all the sheet metal and trusses and everything already pre-made. And I didn't really set a tripod up. I just kind of wandered out every, half an hour, 45 minutes, took a snapshot, came back, and just kept doing that. But I had to kind of step my game up because it was going up fast. And when I ordered this building, I asked them if I could put it up myself and not pay them for the installation, and they wouldn't let me do it. And I see why now. Like, when they build this building, they build the whole periphery just like it doesn't have any doors or windows or anything in there, and then they put all the siding on, keeping it all straight and everything, and then when it's time to put the doors on, they just saw those away. And then as you can see, the sheet metal sticking out of the side, there's no pre-cut sheet metal with holes for the windows. They just take a standard sheet and make it work. So there was a few minor, kerfuffles here along the way, some dents here and there. I mean, it's a shop, so I wasn't, going to take it to some Concours restoration shop and have it fixed. But the one thing that was a little bit annoying is they use like self-tapping screws, and there was probably a coffee can full of them that they just, that one's dull, try another one, they just fling it overboard. So definitely, if you have a steel building erected in your property, go around with one of those magnet sticks and pick up all those pieces, because you're going to have 1,000 flat tires before long. So this is, a few days after the building was completed. You can't see my air quotes, but you can see that this is going to be a pretty big challenge to get a car going in there, or truck even. So my solution to this is I got a dump load trailer of what's called road grind. It's basically an asphalt road where they chop the road up, and it's kind of somewhat pulverized, some big chunks, some little chunks. And the nice thing about it is when it rains, it doesn't get muddy. So I just filled that whole part in. I think it was like $700 for a dump truck load of it. And I just spread it around with a rake and ran over it with the Bronco a couple hundred times and compacted it, and it worked pretty good. So this is what the inside of the shop looked like. It was kind of rainy season, and I hadn't done any grading outdoors, but kind of a blank slate. Now that I had 4 walls and a roof, the first order of business was to get some lights hung up. These right now are just on an extension cord, but I was going to just rent the scaffolding, but this was like, I don't know, $500 or something for the 2 scaffolding things and the wheels, so you could just wheel it around. super convenient. I still have them. They're useful for, window washing and stuff. So um, that made this doing all the electrical work just a game changer. It was way easier and faster and safer. So I got some conduit bent up. So I did all the electrical conduit work, all that stuff I did myself. It's really not that hard. I wouldn't be too afraid of it because the only person who's going to look at it is you, and after you look at it, nobody else is going to look at it. So it's going to get covered in dust and spider webs and stuff. Anyway, good enough is good enough as long as it passes inspection. So now that I have lights in there, I wanted to, before I moved all my equipment in for my old shop, I wanted to get the walls covered, and I wanted to put this. This is like used in like industrial building bathrooms and stuff. It's got kind of a plastic coating on it, but it's basically just pressboard, which I wanted because it would like basically the entire building is a dry erase board, so you can just write stuff on it for later times or. Plus, it brightens up the shop, even though this is pretty white on the inside and reflects light really well. These panels make, even compared to that, it makes a big difference. So unfortunately, with a steel building, there's nothing to attach it to, so I had to put some 2x4 frames and little brackets and whatever. Also, I'm not sure if you can see in this picture, but in between all the panels and the uprights, I kind of pushed it out a little bit and put some goo in there, some construction adhesive, because this thing rattles like a 37 Willys. So I just went around and poked it out, just a little bit, and then put some of that construction adhesive in, let it flex back into shape, and so now it doesn't have any movement. So I probably used 3 or 4, tubes of construction adhesive just to kind of make that less annoying when you slam a door and everything rattles. So getting started with, I got the panel in. There's no power going to it yet. You can this has a 100 amp service panel, but I ran electrical hoses double aught, which is good enough for 200 amp. So there'd be a big hose coming out of this going through the wall if it was like wired up to anything. So all the electrical work I did was with it dead. And then I got it signed off, and then they turned the power off. They had to inspect all the underground trenching and all that stuff, and the hangers for the conduit. Like, it was a legit inspection. It didn't pass the first time, but the first inspector had some issues, so I fixed those. And then the second inspector came back and he said, "Oh, that first inspector was full of shit, but you have to fix this other stuff." It's like, okay, whatever. So you just play their little game. Everybody has a different problem they want you to fix. But on the third try, it was fine. So anyway, this is electrical. Not really much to see there. Some more wallboard going in. I don't have a really good picture of the trench, but that white arrow is pointing to where the trench is. And of course, since I have 4 walls and a roof, now I'm clearing out my shop that I have to pay rent for and moving my CNC mill and my Bridgeport into there, which is pretty brave of me now that I think about it, because before they sign off a building, moving equipment in, clever. Okay, so now we get to the final destination. Like, how much did this dang thing cost, and why? So, probably should have put the permits first, but the original estimate for the permits was $2,800. We went down there and said we want to build a building, 700 square feet. they also probably should mention this as if you go over 1,000 square feet, now you have to put sprinklers. So now you have to have, all the water system, and which, I mean, the house already has sprinklers, but I'm not sure I could tap into that. I might have to have a separate one, which I just didn't want to deal with it. So I didn't really have room to put a 1,000-foot shop there anyway. So anyway, be aware that when you go to the county and say I'm going to build a building, they're going to give you an estimate for the permits. It's going to be double that, probably. In my case, it was almost double. And then it was $1,030 to survey. Now that wasn't to go, I have like an acre, and that wasn't to go all the way around. They just did the area by the road. So if I would have had the whole lot surveyed, it would have been probably double that. I don't know. I didn't ask. Didn't have a lot of money at the time. So, and then nobody mentions this, but so if you get the plans from the city, which I was able to, send a letter to the architect of the building, of the house that I live in, and then I could get the plans. So they came in a PDF form, and then I had to print out those plans down at Kinko's in an E-size sheet, which is a big sheet, and then make my modifications to it. And you have to submit. Not only do you have to submit your plans for, where it's going to be on the property and, where the lights are going to be and all that junk, but the plans for the building, which was 16 pages for the building, and then I think it was another 5 pages of stuff that I did. So that's 20 pages-ish. And the first time I submitted it was like $70 worth of prints. So then they rejected that, and I had to do it again. And then after that planning department approved everything, now I had to make 7 copies of that, because one has to go to the drainage guy, one has to go to the seismic guy, one has to go to the yada, yada, yada fire guy. Everybody had to have their own set of plans, and I had to pay for that. It was $700 the second time. So not sure if that's every county, but that's how it is here. Then I added additional rebar because, it seems like cheap insurance. This is 6,000 psi concrete, so it's pretty good concrete, that's what the manufacturer of the building demanded, I guess. That was on their plans. And then I got a quote for all the grading and the cement work and the cement itself. So I have a bunch of invoices because when the cement showed up, I was the guy that paid for it. So, and then we just subtracted it from, but we got a quote for the total price was $12,950, which I got 3 quotes. This was not the cheapest one, but this guy came highly recommended, and he was really good. The only issue I had with him was he, after it was poured, he didn't come back for like 3 weeks to take his forms off. So I took him off for him and put him on my trailer. And then 3 weeks after that, he showed up with his truck and unloaded it from my trailer and put it on his trailer, and off he went. So that wasn't a super big deal, but wasn't the most professional either. I'm not sure what cement's going for now, but it was $150 a yard, and I used 21 yards. And the cement was, $3,859. I imagine if you multiply that by that, you get that. But and then the steel building itself with the roll-up doors and the windows and all that stuff was $12,548. Now that was, original quote was a little bit less than that, but I had to add those little, because I shifted the building off 6 inches, I had to make those brackets on the inside, which added a couple $100 for it. I think it was $224 more expensive or something like that. And then environmental study, apparently that isn't part of the permits. That was extra $160. And then I had to rent a trencher to make the electrical line go from the pole to the side of the building, so I can run it into the box. So that was $200 ish. And then the conduit for that, because it's a big conduit, it's like, I don't know, 2.5-inch diameter or something. That was $300. I had to go about 60 feet, I think. And then I ran double aught. And I just bought a 500-foot roll. That was $500 for the conduit. I was going to put a 200 amp panel in, but it turns out you have to ask permission of all your neighbors within a 1/4 mile radius to get the county to approve a 200 amp panel, because they think you're going to do some heavy industrial stuff. So I just went, all right, whatever, I'll just change the fuse out or change the breaker out to a 100 amp, and it'll be a 100 amp panel. And but the supply line was already in there. And then interior conduit, breakers, all that stuff, 27 runs to Home Depot for all the interior boards and stuff like that. And then really nice LED lights I bought. They were actually Honeywell. I think I bought them from Walmart or Costco or something. It was online, but those were $500. Those are really nice. And then this panel board I was telling you about, so I can use it as a dry erase board. I'm not sure I would do that again, but it is pretty nice. It lightens up the shop really good. And then the scaffolding, it's really not part of the building, but if I wouldn't have had it, I would have had to rent something. So I figured I'd add that into the cost. And then the road grind, I mean, you're going to have to do some touch-up work after any kind of project like this, but mine had 2.5 foot drop off, so it was completely useless. So, but that's how much it cost me to get. It was a big dump truck. It wasn't like a little stubby guy. It was a big guy, 12 yards or something. He actually broke his drive shaft trying to get up my hill, so I had to rescue him, take his drive shaft off, and run him back to his yard to get a new one. But anyway, it was $700 for the road grind. So all in, I'm sure I missed a few $100 here and there, but it was $37,000 to build a 700 square foot shop. Which, that's not just a 700 square foot shop. That's like, it's got a 100 amp panel in it. It's got lights in it. Like, it's a nice foundation. I was able to move my milling machines in there, and so $50 a square foot. I don't know. I don't think that's too bad, but that's what it cost me. This was a few years ago, but I poked around online a little bit, and the price of the steel buildings has not changed much. And I think the cement price, depending on where you are, is probably still right around here. It might be $175, but even then, that's not a big, right? The labor is the majority of it. So, and I think the difference between the highest quote I had and the lowest quote I had was a couple $1,000s anyway. So I think this is still probably pretty representative. Okay, so I waited for the twilight hour of perfect filming. Well, that's what it looks like today-ish. I got some asphalt poured here. Well, here, and this was a muddy stump. But it's all poured inside there now. There's a retaining wall in there. And compressor house. Don't worry about this garbage. But it's held up actually quite well. No real issues with it. This is the. I probably should put some metal on top of this before UV kills it. But does have one leak on the roof that well, I went up there and I think I found the right bolt and sealed it up. But it's like, have a heavy rainstorm and it
you come back in the morning and there's like 10 drops on the floor or something. Like, it's not a huge leak, but definitely it's not watertight perfectly. But, and then this grading over here, you know, it fills up with tree duff. But before every winter, like you can see, that's above the foundation there. So every, you know, end of fall, I just go in there and that goes down another, you know, 6 or 8 inches. That's just tree duff. And this cherry tree here. And so I just clean that out and through there, and then there's actually a drain under here that you can't even see because, you know, it's full of tree duff, but there's like a 4-inch, yeah, there's this big old tube right here, which was free because I found it in the yard. So I just kind of clean all the schmutz out of there before the rainy season comes, and then it just drains down there. Another thing that these steps were on the property, so I didn't have to like make cement foundation steps here. I just kind of drilled some holes through there and bonked some rebar in and kind of leveled them. They've been there for, I don't know, 5 years or whatever, how long this building's been there, and so those are fine. They did run out of cement. They had to get a little baby cement thing, so that's why this looks like kind of weird, but no harm, no foul. Everything else is, I mean, the fact that I have rebar in there probably helps. And then I wanted to mention this. On the end of the building, they recommended, the company Interstate Carports recommended this little cutout. So my cement guy framed this all in. I didn't really frame it in, but he did it to how the drawing said from Interstate. So, and what this is supposed to do is, because it doesn't have a slope to shoot off the side of the roof like it does on this side. Like it does over here. So that's to keep it from, you know, kind of dribbling inside there. So now when I had to shift the building over, I told them to not do it over here because it's already up against the edge. It wouldn't have anything to seal against. But as you can see, yeah, this is right up against the edge here. And the same thing on the back. But up here, I have this, I don't know, this looks like about 8 inches. I mean, plus or minus a few inches for, you know, wood butchers and cement people. Yeah, so another 8 inches here. So I think it's good that they, you know, tell you to make your foundation a little bit bigger than it needs to be, because if your foundation is not perfectly square, when the building people come, what are they supposed to do? Let it overhang? So I think I lucked out and picked a pretty good building supplier. I mean, I'm happy with it. So anyway, that's Interstate. I don't get any money from them. But when you do a good job in this day and age, I think you need credit for it. It's pretty rare. And while we're on the subject of accolades, thank you to everybody that subscribed to my channel, even the people that subscribed and then unsubscribed. I appreciate you. And I can't believe, I mean, this is, you know, compared to some people on YouTube, it's nothing, but I'm doing this basically for fun and to try and help people as much as I can. And so the fact that this many people watch my videos, I'm glad. I'm hoping you're finding it entertaining as well as educational, and hopefully both. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends and make some comments. I have a lot more. I have pages in a notebook of potential videos that I can and likely will make. But most of the stuff I do is just to help, and or if I'm going to do it anyway, like the Mustang build, and I really got to get working on the Bronco build. But yeah, most of it's just it's stuff I'm going to be doing anyway, and so it takes a little bit of extra effort to film it, but not that much. And if it helps one person, it's better than not helping one person. So anyway, thank you for all your support. Appreciate you.